my name is Dr. Sarah. Welcome to my channel. For those of you who are new, and welcome to those of you who are returning. I just wanted to introduce what I'm calling my Anything is Possible series, and I decided to start off with telling you a little bit about me and my journey to becoming a doctor, because it is, I think, somewhat inspirational, and I think that you can draw some sort of positive inspiration from it. So to get started, for those of you who don't know, I'm an emergency medicine physician based in New York City, and I have been working as a physician for the past, I would say, like 12 years now. And so it's been a journey. I'm like pretty well established within my career, and so yeah, I'm gonna give steps to how I got here and hopefully sprinkle some wisdom along the way. So when it comes to my journey to being a doctor, one thing that I'm asked frequently is, when did I know, or how did I know that I wanted to become a doctor? And to be honest, I don't have a concrete answer to that question. I have always, for as long as I remember, said that I wanted to be a doctor. That was the only thing I ever mentioned. As a matter of fact, my father told me that when I was 3 years old was the first time that he and like my family heard that I wanted to be a doctor. He asked me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says verbatim that I said, "I'm gonna be a doctor, Daddy." He says it in like this little, but anyway, he says that I said that I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was 3. So I honestly don't know where that desire came from. I don't know if I maybe watched an episode of like Sesame Street or saw something on TV or a movie. I have no idea. But all I do know is that for as long as I can remember, I've always said I wanted to be a doctor. Never wanted to be like a firefighter or an astronaut or a judge or a lawyer. It was like, I want to be a doctor, and that was the only thing I'd ever said. And so this is, I realize, a part of the story that's pretty important, because of the fact that I knew what I wanted to be and said so early on. My parents, particularly my father, obviously, of course, or not obviously, but of course my mother, really just like fostered that within me. So one thing that I know that I have that's very special to me is a Fisher-Price doctor set, because when I did tell my father that I wanted to be a doctor, he went out and bought me a Fisher-Price doctor set. All throughout the years, like, my parents put me in like science camps during the summer, and for Christmas I remember getting like a little microscope and a dissection kit. There was always like a nurturing, a fostering, and really like a protection, if you will, of my dream. And so with this fostering, like I said, it was always like, okay, she's gonna be a doctor. I always knew I'm gonna be a doctor. To be honest, I did do well in school when I was younger, like through like my grade school years. Elementary school, I skipped a grade. Like school learning, academics just always came extremely easily to me. And this, I'm saying this not to brag, I'm saying this because it's gonna come in later. But yeah, school just came very easily to me. And then I guess because of the goal, what I knew I wanted to do, I knew that school was important, and like an important part, obviously, of what it was that I needed to do in order to achieve that goal. So I think there's absolutely benefit in knowing what you want to do somewhat early. No problem if you don't. That's not what this story is about, but just wanted to put that out there. But anyway, so with learning, or rather with knowing that I wanted to be a doctor, kind of going through grade school, like, being a wonderful student, no problems, whatever the case is. I will say that because school came kind of easily to me, or learning and like information came easily to me, I was like not the most motivated student. Like, I was somewhat like lazy, if that makes sense, because it came so natural. Like, I didn't really develop a habit of studying. I didn't really develop the habit of getting all of my work done until it was done. It was like I was pretty much able to like finish a lot of stuff in school, and then by the time I got home, it was like I'm chilling. So I was smart, but in terms of having, like, I'll say, the work ethic of a good student, I don't know that I really had that. And that's important, because when I got to college, I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. Shout out to HBCUs. Shout out to the #1 HBCU, which is Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. So I went to Spelman. and went to go major in biology, which was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. It's probably the one thing in life that if I had an opportunity to go back and do it a second time, like starting from scratch, that's the one thing that I would go back and do, starting from scratch. So if you have any questions about HBCUs, about the experience at Spelman, especially if you're thinking about it, if you want somebody to kind of give you an insight to it, holla at me, hit me in my DMs, okay? But anyway, went to Spelman, majored in biology, and honestly, it was a different beast from high school because college is so like self-directed. It also was the first time, as most people at in that time of life, it was my first time away from home. So it took a little while, but I got the swing of things. I got the balance. I know I had like a few biology, or my first biology courses were very difficult for me. Like I said, I didn't really have like this great work ethic. I was just very smart. And so like I remember halfway into my first semester, I was not going to do well in my biology class, my core biology class. And I remember my professor telling me like, I went to her office hours and she was like, yeah, like if you don't do extremely well on this next test, like you're not going to do well. This is also important because I went to Spelman on a half scholarship. So my GPA was important. Like I had to maintain a certain GPA while I was in school. So I just remember her telling me that, and it kind of like gave me the reality check I needed to be able to like hunker down, go to the library, really like learn how to study for the class and for the, level that I was now at. And, I kind of like figured out my way of studying, learned how to best study, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, learned how to like jump through certain hoops in terms of studying while I was in college. I am so blessed and so grateful still to have found a group of friends. There were 10 of us, 10 girls. We were all biology majors, and we formed a study group. We called ourselves School is for Suckers. Shout out to School is for Suckers. And we were so close to the point that we would schedule our exact class, like we would make our schedule around with each other so that we would have the same exact schedule, so that at any given time, all 10 of us were having to grind at the same time. Like if there were finals, we were studying for the same exact finals. And when it was time to like relax and chill and hang out, we were all like free to hang out together. So this is very important. I mentioned them because one, they were just so integral in me, like I said, kind of just developing a studying style, knowing how to collaborate, learning how to like speak up when I needed help and things like that. But also because the company that you keep is very, very, very important on your journey to wherever it is that you're going. And when I say wherever it is that you're going, because you could be heading towards success or another path, right? It just depends on which path you're choosing. And so the friends that you have can help you on that path, whether the path is up here or down here, okay? So the friends that I was blessed enough to be given and meet during my time there, like I said, very key in getting me through school. By the time it was over, or toward the end, if you will, of college, a lot of us were interested in becoming physicians. So we all applied to medical school. When I applied to med school, my GPA was decent, but it was not super, super competitive. I had like kind of a B plus A minus GPA. I don't know what it is, what that would translate to now, just because I'm so far removed from like being a student, whether it's college, undergrad, or med school. So the numbers don't compute for me anymore. But whatever the case is, I was a very like, not average, a little above average, but not super, super competitive. Anyway, applied to medical school during my 4th year of college, because it's kind of like, okay, you go to college, you apply, so that way when college is over, you graduate and then you go straight to med school. I did not get into medical school my first year of applying. And there were, looking back, a lot of mistakes that I made. One, namely, was that because I was from New York and wanted to go back home for medical school, I only applied to medical schools in New York, which is a huge city, So obviously, like a lot of applicants, very competitive. Not only had I only applied to schools in New York, but I only applied to 4 schools in New York. I applied to SUNY Downstate, which was my first choice. SUNY Downstate is in Brooklyn, where I'm originally from, and where most of my family is like based in. And then I applied to like Columbia, maybe Mount Sinai, and I think NYU. I don't know, but like super like Ivy League, super upper echelon, super 4.0 GPA type schools. And like I said, only 4. So put my eggs in a very, or put, yeah, my eggs in a very, very small basket as opposed to like a wide net. And then, like I said, was applying to very competitive schools. I guess my confidence at that age and stage, because at that point I never really understood or really experienced any type of like academic rejection or failure or anything like that. It was just kind of like, of course I'll get into NYU with my 3.4 or 5 or 6. I don't remember, like I said, what my GPA was. Of course I'll get into NYU with my 3.5 GPA. Why wouldn't I? Of course I'll get into NYU with my 3.5 GPA. Why wouldn't I? So like I said, I had this like naivete, if you will, this like hubris, this kind of like vibrato where I applied. And like I said, I didn't get accepted. And I will say it was definitely a shock to my system, very much so a disappointment, but also it was just kind of like, okay, oh, I forgot to mention the MCAT, which is the test that you take to help. It's almost like the SATs for medical school. My MCAT scores were also very like mid, like not like above average, but not like the most competitive enough to be like, okay, I'm smart, but not where I was, like I said, competing with like these 4.0 GPA. So all my stuff was like kind of here, just scraping the surface. But anyway, where was I? I was saying that, oh no, someone help me, I'm lost. Oh, I applied, didn't get in, and was very disappointed, but also kind of not, because I kind of felt like, oh, this is what happens on TV when people are like, oh, I'm going to take a year off. I was like, oh, I guess this is how it happens. So I'm going to take a year off. So that was what I planned to do. I planned to, after graduating and going back home, I planned to study for the MCAT again to get a better score on the MCAT, and then just kind of like build my resume by working in research and stuff like that. I did mention that SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn was my number 1 choice med school, and so what I did was I went to SUNY Downstate to go ahead and try to find a job there, because I figured, 1, it would help boost my resume because I'm working in some sort of research, and then 2, perhaps I could, network, rub some shoulders or whatever, and kind of like get in there in that way. So while working at Downstate, I am a research assistant or something like that, doing like, whatever. I also, at some point, once that research project ended and the funding for that program ended, one of the people in the department I was working on kind of like took pity on me and invited me to be basically like a clerk, kind of like, yeah, like a clerk, if you will, in the department, just like copying, folding, collating, just kind of like pushing paper around. And I was grateful because it kept me at Downstate, kept me employed, but, didn't have anything to do with what I wanted to be doing, but was still a stepping stone or just something to kind of like keep me busy while I'm working toward this goal of applying to medical school, getting my things together, right? So while I'm working at Downstate, I one year of applying, or excuse me, I planned to take 1 year off. 1 year turned into like 2 years, and it happened so quickly. It was like, I guess with, retaking the MCAT, and then like there's a certain application cycle, whatever. All I know is that 1 year turned into 2 years, and I looked up and I was like, okay, I've been working here for 2 years now. I retook the MCAT. My score was a little bit better. I have a little bit more life experience, maybe a little bit more, something impressive to put on my resume with the research. So let me go ahead and apply again. This time around, not only did I apply a second time, or rather with applying a second time, I tried to do things a little bit smarter. So there were certain mistakes that I made. I mentioned only applying to 4 schools in one state. This time I obviously corrected that and applied to a lot more schools all over the place. I applied to schools that were not as like hoity-toity, if you will, like not as like, not like more than just Ivy League schools. What else did I do differently? I tried to like kind of, like I said, work my network, but to be honest, like what you'll find with a lot of particularly Black and brown med students, like a lot of us are the first doctors in our family. So I didn't have anybody in my family who was a doctor before me to be able to like guide me and tell me this or that, or oh, I know this one, I know that one. Even when it came to like studying and taking the MCAT, I remember having to really like bargain, negotiate, and convince my mother that like, yes, I do need to spend all of this money for this prep course to retake this test. Not because she's not supportive and not because she had a problem funding my goals or anything, but because of the fact that, like I said, no one in my family had done it before. There was like this unfamiliarity that went along with like having to now like spend lots of money on prepping for a test. It was always just kind of like, you're smart, go ahead and study and do well, right? But like these tests are now kind of like on a whole different league than what I was used to. I'm not going to get in for the sake of the video or the sake of the conversation about bias in standardized testing and things like that. But just know that the tests were very, like I said, unfamiliar to me. So with that, I mentioned my parents, and I mentioned them because as supportive as they have been to me throughout my life and as supportive as they were to me like during my formative years, anything that I wanted to do, I said I wanted to play the piano. They bought me a keyboard that I ended up like never using. Sorry about that still, mommy and daddy. But anyway, child, they've always been supportive. But the thing with me going to med school, the reason why it was so unfamiliar and like different and difficult for me is because it was the first time that like my parents could not help me, because not because they didn't want to or because they didn't want to lend the support, but because they didn't know what support was needed because they'd never done it before. And like I said, in a lot of our communities, we don't just know a doctor here or a doctor there to be able to be like, hey, she wants to be a doctor. What do you recommend, or how can you, support her, or what advice or information? That's kind of what part of why I feel like doing this video is important, just because there are so many of us I know who have certain dreams, goals, objectives, but don't know anyone personally to be able to know how to reach out to them in order to, get the support or the network for that. So anyway, first time in my life that my parents could not help me with something. And so, like I said, I'm kind of just trying to like figure it out as I go along. I'm praying about it. Obviously, I'm trying to like, name it and claim it. I'm trying to visualize myself there. And for those of you who don't know, I'm ashamed that it's almost 18 minutes in the video and I'm just now mentioning this, but I'm a believer. And so my desire to become a physician, I always knew was not something in and of myself. Like I believed and believe that it was and is my purpose, like my calling, what God called me to do. And so there was this assurance, but also like, yeah, I'll be honest, there was a frustration because I'm kind of like, well, God, if you called me to do this, how is it so difficult? And the reason why I guess you don't realize how we came to difficulty, just to catch you up on the story, I applied once, right? Didn't get in. Now, 2 years later, I'm applying a second time. And although I kind of broadened my horizons in terms of my applications, I'm not getting a whole bunch of callbacks or interviews. As a matter of fact, I'm not getting any callbacks or any interviews. I think I was able to squeak out like maybe one interview at Morehouse School of Medicine, and honestly I feel like I got that interview just because of my association as a Spelman graduate. I remember getting like a possible callback, and it was like a missed opportunity where like something happened, I don't know, but I was applying to now like I think like 12 to 15 schools or something like that. I was not getting phone calls. I was not getting interviews. I had no idea what I was doing. And in my mind, it's like, okay, I've improved. my application. I've, done this, that, whatever the case is. Working it now, mind you, I'm still working at Downstate this entire time. And I applied to Downstate and still had not heard anything from Downstate, right? So that's my number one choice. And while I was there, I did meet like a few people, like somebody from my grandmother's church or something, knew someone who was there, so kind of put me in contact with her. So we had like a one-off meeting, and that was it. But for the most part, like, I'm trying to make things shake and nothing is shaking. And I'm, like I said, praying. I'm asking God. I'm kind of like, yo, like, you are the one who put the desire in my heart to be a physician. Like, why does there feel like there's so much resistance to this, right? So anyway, at some point I get an interview for Downstate, which I somewhat expected because I'm working there. Did I interview for Downstate the first time I applied? I actually, the first time I applied to medical school, I did get an interview to Downstate, and I interviewed and they didn't accept me. So now 2 years later, I'm applying a second time to Downstate while having worked there for 2 years. So I'm kind of like, okay, like, it's in the bag. I applied to I go to my interview for Downstate, and I get in a letter, I think it was a letter back then, where it was like, you've not been accepted. And not only did the letter say you're not accepted to Downstate, but also do not contact us again about this decision. Do not appeal this decision. Don't try to do any, like we do not want you. And I think the letter was so strong now that I think about it, because of the fact that I applied the 2 years before that. And then also, like I said, was kind of like trying to move and shake and do little things or whatever for people to know me. But the letter was just very like finite, very final. It was just like, you're not accepted to Downstate. Don't appeal the decision. It's final. Please, like, pack your things. Like, don't ever come back. And let me tell you something. First day back in the office at Downstate after getting rejected from Downstate was probably the most like pitiful little day I've ever had. The entire office was quiet because I think they knew that like that acceptances and rejections went out, and because I took the day off at some point, I think everyone knew that like this girl did not get into Downstate. Anyway, child, at some point I'm like super just depressed, discouraged, depressed and discouraged. I interviewed for Morehouse School of Medicine, like I mentioned. They waitlisted me. And by the way, I never heard a yes or no from them, so I'm still waiting Morehouse School of Medicine to let me know whether or not I got into the med school. But when I say just like the face of depression, it was like, I just was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? This dream of mine, like, it feels like it's not going to happen for me. And so what I did was, although I was very, I now look and listen to songs about praying mothers, praying grandmothers, and, prayers of the righteous availing much, because even though I was not in a place where I was able to like pray and believe and have faith for my own dreams, my mother, my father, my grandmother, God rest her soul, were 100% still just supportive, just praying. And no matter what they saw, it was just like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to get into medical school. So I actually remember at some point, even after getting the rejection from Downstate, my mother told me, she said, I believe that you're going to get into med school. I'm not counting any school out, especially Downstate. I still believe that God is going to make a way for you to get into Downstate. Even though they rejected me twice, they told me twice, you're not accepted to this medical school. Do not appeal. Do not contact us again. Don't apply again. And my mother said, I believe that God is going to make a way for you to get into medical school, particularly Downstate, and I'm not counting any school out. And this is what I believe. When I say I got so angry at her, because it was kind of like, stop. Let's stop with this whole, we believe God, we're having all this faith. At this point, it's mental anguish for me. It was like torment. It felt like like believing in like something that just was not going to happen. I just wanted to not keep my hopes up. I think I just wanted to go through the mourning process of, okay, I've applied a second time. I still haven't gotten anything. I don't know what's going on, whatever. Let me finish this up. End of the interview season comes up. It's very clear I didn't get into any medical schools, but there was something about the fact that I was still working as as like the clerk, that just didn't sit right with me. I kind of felt like I need to leave. I need to quit my job, because I felt like the longer I stayed, the more comfortable I would be, and that nothing would happen for me. I felt like I needed to kind of like be thrust into like an uncomfortable situation to kind of like get into the path, if you will, that I needed to go. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice. I had no idea where I was going to go. There was there was a program that I found in Pennsylvania. It was like a a post-bac program, for people who had already graduated but needed to kind of like boost their application some more. The program was 1 year long. It cost $20,000 to go. There was no like degree. I wouldn't go and get a degree or anything. It was just literally like paying to be in this program. As a part of the program, I was mandated to take the MCAT again. So I would have taken the MCAT for the third time. I would have to pay for room and board. That none of that was included. Like I said, I had to pay tuition, and also there was kind of like the stats they gave us was there was a 50% chance. Or rather, the people who went into that program, 50% of them after that program actually got into medical school. So now we're basically telling me that I'm about to spend a year, $20,000, retake the MCAT for the flip of a coin chance of whether or not I'm going into med school. I was like, you know what? I don't have any other thing to do. I don't know what else to do. Like, let me just go ahead and do this. At least it'll keep me in school. It'll be something where I feel like I'm working on my dreams. Like I said, put in my 2 weeks, found out that I was going there, and it was like, all right, let me just do this. And I was preparing to go I was preparing to go to this program in Pennsylvania. It was a Friday afternoon. I was supposed to drive out there with my family on Sunday. On Friday afternoon, and I've been packing. I was packing, ready to go. On Friday afternoon, I get a phone call from this woman. She's like, hi, my name is Miss Bowman. I'm from, I don't remember the exact name of the organization now, the American Medical School Post-Bac Program, something of New York, something. She was like, are you committed, or have you signed up to go to a medical school starting in the fall? I was like, no, I'm not. I didn't get accepted to med school. I'm going to this program in Philadelphia in 2 days. She said, okay, well, people don't know about this, but SUNY Downstate has a post-bac program where they recommend 3 medical students that they think have potential but need a little extra help to kind of like boost their skills or whatever, their resume. SUNY Downstate has this program where they select 2 to 3 students out of all the applicants for that year. They send you to this program for a year, and if you make it through this program for the year, you are automatically guaranteed admission to Downstate. All these years later, and I'm still getting emotional about it. I didn't expect that. She said this program was in Buffalo, New York. Like I said, it was 1 year long, but it was completely free. I did not have to pay tuition to go there. It was at the University of Buffalo. I didn't have to pay tuition to go there. They told me that they told me my MCAT scores were good enough that I did not have to take the MCAT for the third time, that my MCAT scores were solid enough that they would accept my MCAT scores. They also provided room and board. So they gave me a monthly stipend where I could have money to pay for all living expenses, books, food, everything. They paid me to be there. And they said, not only that as long as I maintained a B+ average, I was guaranteed to go to Downstate, that I was automatically accepted to go to Downstate at the end of the year. The prayers of the righteous availeth much. So with that, I quickly obviously called Philadelphia and I told them, give the spot to somebody else. I'm gonna go. I packed my bags. I went to Buffalo instead. I spent the year there. It was a tough year. Maybe in another video I'll talk about that. Such a tough year, but such an important year. I made, first of all, lifelong friends there. Two, I learned, I'll say I'll stay true to what I said. I'm gonna do a second video about it. I won't talk about it. But the year was rough, but I got through it. And at the end of the year, I got my acceptance letter to SUNY Downstate, the same school that told me, don't apply, we're done. We never want to see or hear from you again. And I'm here before you right now, a physician who not only graduated from her first choice medical school, SUNY Downstate, who said no, I graduated from my first choice residency as chief resident as well. And I've been, like I said, working as an EM physician for the past 11, 12 years now. So anything is possible to those who believe. Anything is possible to those who have faith and then put work behind their faith as well. I haven't really fleshed out the major talking points regarding this, but I will say, Jeremiah 29:11 is a very commonly rehearsed or quoted verse, right? For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. There's another verse after it, 12, that says, you will call upon me and I will answer, right? It's talking about praying and actually seeking God. We'll talk about that maybe another time. But either way, the point in this is really, I don't want to be preachy. I just wanted to inspire you that whatever it is that you are looking to achieve, you don't have to, you never have to ascribe to the reality around you. If you get two rejection letters in your hand, it doesn't matter if you know that God has purposed you to a certain calling, to a certain assignment. He will provide for you to get there. He will provide for you to be there. He will make doors open that were closed. He will set out a table before you in the presence of your enemies, and that's even if the enemy is in here, right? I don't know how I want to end this video. I didn't really plan anything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it here, and maybe in the comments we can chat and kind of talk a little bit more about it. But I just really want this to be a source of inspiration and encouragement to anybody, like I said, who has a dream, who has a goal, who thinks that it might be too big, who thinks that it looks like it's not going to happen. It can happen. It will happen. Be persistent in your faith. Be persistent in your belief, and be persistent in your work, what it is that you have to do to make sure that you get there. Okay, I will talk to you all later. Hope you enjoyed this chat. Like I said, I'm Dr. Sarah Jameson, Dr. Sarah_Jam on all platforms. Find me there, and yeah, let's talk. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.